Before beginning his public ministry, Jesus went into the desert and fasted for 40 days. 40 days without food. And only then did he face Satan and defeat every temptation. Here's the question that should make us pause. Why would God himself need to fast? What does that tell us about the spiritual power hidden in this ancient practice? That is exactly what we are going to understand together. By the end of this video, you will know what fasting truly is according to the Catholic Church, why it works on a spiritual level, and most importantly, how to practice it correctly without confusion or unnecessary suffering. Because there is a lot of misunderstanding out there. Some people think fasting is just a diet with a religious label. Others believe it is about suffering for the sake of suffering, as if God were pleased by our hunger. Neither of these is true. And the Church has always taught something far deeper and far more beautiful. So let us begin with the most fundamental question. What exactly is fasting? The Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 1434 teaches that fasting is one of the three principal forms of penance, alongside prayer and almsgiving. But fasting is not merely skipping meals. It is not about punishing your body or proving how strong your willpower is. The purpose of fasting is to submit the flesh to the spirit, to discipline what is lower so that what is higher can lead. Think of it this way. Inside each of us, there is a constant tension. St. Paul described it perfectly in his letter to the Romans when he wrote, "I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing." We all know that experience. You want to pray, but your body wants to scroll through your phone. You want to be patient, but your impulses flare up before you can stop them. You want to resist temptation, but something inside you feels weak, almost automatic. This is not a flaw in God's design. It is a wound we inherited from original sin. Our desires, our appetites, our impulses, they are not evil in themselves, but they are disordered. They do not naturally obey reason or faith. They need to be trained, and this is precisely what fasting does. It trains the body to obey the soul. It strengthens the will. It puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. The Catechism, in paragraph 2043, lists fasting among the precepts of the Church that all Catholics are obliged to follow. This is not optional. It is not just for monks or mystics. It is part of the ordinary Christian life. And when you understand why, you will not see it as a burden. You will see it as a gift. Fasting is not a Catholic invention. It runs through the entire history of salvation like a golden thread. Moses fasted for 40 days on Mount Sinai before receiving the 10 Commandments. Elijah fasted for 40 days before encountering God on Mount Horeb. Daniel fasted before receiving his visions. Queen Esther called her people to fast before approaching the king to save the Jewish nation. And Jesus himself, as we mentioned, fasted for 40 days before launching his ministry. This is not coincidence, this is a pattern. Whenever God was about to do something powerful through someone, fasting was part of the preparation. And Jesus did not just practice fasting, he expected his followers to do the same. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, he says, "When you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites." Notice that he does not say, "if you fast." He says, "when you fast." He assumes it. He takes it for granted that his disciples will fast. It is simply part of the life of faith. But here is where it gets even more interesting. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, the disciples try to cast out a demon and fail. They come to Jesus confused, asking why they could not do it. And Jesus answers, "This kind can only come out through prayer and fasting." Some spiritual battles cannot be won by willpower alone. Some chains cannot be broken without this weapon. Why is fasting so powerful in spiritual combat? Because it attacks the root of so many of our weaknesses. Think about it. Most temptations appeal to the flesh, to comfort, to pleasure, to instant gratification. The enemy knows that if he can keep you enslaved to your appetites, he can keep you weak. But when you fast, you are telling your body, "No, you do not rule me, I rule you." You are building a kind of spiritual muscle. You are training yourself to say no to what is easy so that you can say yes to what is good. St. Paul understood this perfectly. He wrote to the Corinthians, "I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others I myself should be disqualified." Even the apostle, the great evangelist, knew that without discipline, without mastery over the flesh, the spiritual life crumbles. And this is not just biblical. This is the constant teaching of the church from the very beginning. The Didache, one of the oldest Christian documents outside the New Testament, written in the 1st century, instructs Christians to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. The early church did not see fasting as an extraordinary practice for the spiritually elite. It was the normal rhythm of Christian life. The saints throughout history, from St. Augustine to St. Francis to St. Teresa of Calcutta, all practiced fasting as a regular part of their journey toward holiness. And the Church continues to call us to this practice today. The Code of Canon Law, in Canons 1249 through 1251, establishes that all Catholics between the ages of 18 and 59 are bound by the law of fasting on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, and all Catholics from the age of 14 are bound to abstain from meat on Fridays during Lent. But the law of the Church is the minimum, not. The saints did not stop at the minimum. And neither should we, if we truly want to grow. Now that we understand what fasting is and why it matters, let us get practical. Because knowledge without action changes nothing. And one of the most common reasons people do not fast is simply that they do not know how to do it properly. They try once, they feel terrible, they get a splitting headache, and they conclude that fasting is not for them. But the problem was not fasting itself. The problem was that no one taught them the right way to do it. The Church, in her wisdom, does not demand the impossible. When she proposes something for all the faithful, she proposes something that ordinary people can actually do. And there are different levels of fasting, different forms that you can adapt to your state of life, your health, and your spiritual maturity. Let me walk you through the 4 main types, from the most accessible to the most intense. The first type is what we call the fast of the Church. This is the simplest form and the one that the Church officially prescribes for days like Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. Here is how it works. You eat 1 full meal during the day and 2 smaller meals that together do not. That is it. No snacking in between, no constant grazing throughout. You eat breakfast. You have a modest lunch or dinner and a light meal at the other. Some people prefer to have their full meal at lunch and a light dinner. Others prefer the opposite. Either way is fine. The key is discipline. You are training yourself not to eat every time you feel the slightest hunger. You are teaching your body that it does not give the orders. This form of fasting is accessible to almost anyone. Pregnant women, the elderly, those with health conditions, all can adapt this form to their circumstances. The point is not to suffer. The point is to exercise self-control. The second type is the fast of liquids. This one requires a bit more from you. You begin with a good breakfast, a solid breakfast that will sustain you. And then, for the rest of the day, until around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, you consume only liquids. Water, of course, is essential and should be taken throughout the day. But you can also have tea, simple juices, or a light smoothie. Whenever hunger comes, you drink something and continue with your day. This is not about starving yourself. If you feel faint or develop a severe headache, something is wrong and you should eat. But for most people, after a proper breakfast, this form of fasting is entirely manageable, and the spiritual benefits are profound. You will notice that your prayer becomes clearer, your mind less cluttered with the constant distraction of food. The third type is the fast of bread and water. This is a more ancient and more intense form of fasting, often associated with Marian apparitions and the practice of the saints. At Medjugorje, Our Lady has reportedly asked the faithful to fast on bread and water on Wednesdays and Fridays. Here is how it works. You begin with a normal breakfast. Then, throughout the day, you eat only bread and drink only water. Not 8 slices of bread, of course, but a moderate amount, enough to sustain you without satisfying you completely. One important note, do not eat bread and drink water at the exact same time because the bread will expand in your stomach and cause discomfort. Alternate between them, a piece of bread now, some water later. This form of fasting requires more discipline, but it also produces greater spiritual fruit. Many people who practice it regularly report a deeper sense of peace, greater clarity in prayer, and increased strength against habitual sins. The fourth type is the complete fast. This is the most demanding form and should not be attempted by beginners. After a substantial breakfast, you consume nothing except water until the late afternoon, around 4 or 5 o'clock. No food, no juice, no tea, only water. This is the kind of fast that Jesus himself practiced in the desert, and it is powerful. But it is also intense. If you have never fasted before, do not start here. Begin with the fast of the church, then move to liquids, then to bread and water, and only after you have built up your spiritual and physical endurance should you attempt the complete fast. The goal is growth, not heroic gestures that leave you burned out and discouraged. Now, let me share some practical wisdom that will make all the difference. First, choose your fasting day wisely. Do not fast on a day when you have an important exam, a job interview, or physically demanding work. Your mind will be slower, your energy lower, and you will not perform at your best. If Friday does not work for you because of your schedule, move your fast to Wednesday or Thursday. The important thing is that you do it, not that you prove something to yourself on the hardest possible day. Second, always drink water. Dehydration is not fasting, it is self-harm. Water is not considered breaking the fast in any of these forms. Third, if you fail, if you give in and eat before the time you set, do not wallow in guilt. Simply start again the next week. Fasting is a practice, a discipline that grows stronger over time. You would not quit learning an instrument because you hit a wrong note. Do not quit fasting because you stumbled once. So what happens when you make fasting a regular part of your life? What are the fruits that the saints and the faithful have experienced throughout the centuries? The first and most immediate fruit is self-mastery. You begin to realize that you are not a slave to your impulses. That feeling of, I cannot resist, starts to lose its power over you. You discover a freedom you did not know you had. The freedom to say no to what is easy and yes to what is good. This spills over into every area of your life. The person who can say no to food when hungry can say no to anger when provoked, no to lust when tempted, no to despair when suffering. Fasting builds the muscle of the will, and that muscle serves you in every battle. The second fruit is clarity in prayer. When the body is quieted, the soul speaks more clearly. Many people find that their best prayer happens on fasting days. Distractions fade, the noise of the world grows dim. And in that silence, God's voice becomes easier to hear. This is why the saints fasted before making important decisions, before entering into spiritual combat, before moments of great grace. The third fruit is deeper conversion. Fasting breaks attachments. It loosens the grip that material things have on our hearts. And when we are less attached to the things of this world, we become more attached to the things of heaven. St. John Chrysostom said that fasting is the nourishment of the soul. It seems paradoxical, but it is true. By emptying ourselves of food, we make room for God. And the fourth fruit is intercessory power. The Church has always taught that our sacrifices, offered in union with Christ, have value for the salvation of others. When you fast for a loved one who has fallen away from the faith, when you fast for the conversion of sinners, when you fast for the souls in purgatory, you are participating in the redemptive work of Christ Himself. Your hunger becomes a prayer. Your sacrifice becomes a gift. St. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, "I discipline my body and keep it under control." He understood that the spiritual life is not passive. It requires training, effort, sacrifice. But the reward is worth everything. The reward is freedom. The reward is holiness. The reward is heaven. So here is my challenge to you. This week, choose one day and fast. Start with the fast of the Church if you have never done it before. Eat a good breakfast, one full meal, one light meal, and nothing in between. Offer it for a specific intention, perhaps for your own conversion, perhaps for someone you love. And pay attention to what happens inside you. Pay attention to the freedom you begin to feel. If this video helped you understand fasting better, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next teaching. And remember, you are not alone in this journey. The saints are cheering you on. The Blessed Virgin Mary is praying for you. And Christ Himself, who fasted in the desert and conquered every temptation, is with you, giving you His strength. May God bless you and keep you. May Our Lady wrap you in her mantle of protection. And may you grow, day by day, into the saint that God created you to be. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.